Hello, my beautiful friend. This is Raine Holtz, reporting live from the Necromadion. If you're here now, it means you probably just finished listening to my album Maleficium, and if you're anything like me, you must be brewing with questions. So, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to use the next few minutes to go over all tracks and share some details about their conceptions, as well as some personal meditations that might offer some solace to your curiosity. So, take your going out hat and a scarf, but leave behind hope and all positive thoughts as we journey into the dark abyss of death and walk amongst witchcraft, vampirism, infanticide, cannibalism, and suicide. Take heart, for I'm with you, and I'll do my best to bring you home safe and unscathed. No promises though. I'm sure you understand. This is the Maleficium Familiar Companion, a radio transmission. Track 1, Sagdid, Sight of the Four-Eyed Dog. This was the first piece I recorded for the album, although it got revisited at least 3 times and expanded accordingly. I envisioned a long, winding road of a track, profoundly atmospheric and enveloping. I wanted to make music for my dog Kitsu. This is probably the only moment of sweetness in an otherwise bleak and terrifying album. And it's dedicated to Kitsu because, well, he was with me during absolutely every second of recording Maleficium. He never left my side during the process, which is in stark contrast to the 6 months we were apart when I moved to another country and I couldn't take him with me right away, and he was left behind at a friend's house. The way I missed him was enough to push me to the brink of serious suicidal ideation. And the concept of Sagdid came from that experience. In Zoroastrianism, the dog is a sacred animal. Sagdid is a ritual where a dog watches over a recently deceased person to help them move into the next world. Many animals are considered dogs in this religion, and as such, sacred. The fox and the otter, amongst others. The otter, or the water dog, is thought to be the reincarnation of many dogs combined as one. Dogs with eyebrow-like tan spots over their eyes are considered four-eyed and especially important in the funerary ritual of Sagdid. Zoroastrianism also connects this piece to the last track of my first album, Burials, Dakma, which is a tribute to their towers of silence to house the decomposing dead. Instrumental, ritualistic, centered around a pet of mine, I could go on. The thought of the dog being an enlightened animal makes sense to me, and I believe will to a lot of you as well. The structure of this track is the idea of Maleficium condensed. Many different musical movements woven together in a layered, drone-like atmosphere. There is the sound of death at the start, the joy of the dog being brought in as the medieval-like dance is led by the hurdy-gurdy, the subsequent invitation for a rewarding walk afterwards, and a lovely gift at the end, in the form of a piano piece I thought about while watching Kitsu sleep upon my bed. A 9-tailed fox, undisturbed, elegant, and sweet beyond any description. There is a small nod back to Urania as the piano swells up. This is the inversion of it, linking both my instrumental albums together. Circles. Track 2, Into a Hair. Isabel Gowdy was a Scottish woman accused of witchcraft in 1662 during a horrible period of witch hunts in Scotland. Her confessions, given without apparent torture, paint a picture of witchcraft beliefs in Europe at that time. Most of what we identify today with satanic witches can be traced back to her claims of attending sabbats, shape-shifting into animals, and cavorting with the devil. In one of her confessions, she explained how she would turn into a hare. "I shall go into a hare, with sorrow and sigh and meikle care, and I shall go in the devil's name, aye will I come home again. Hare, hare, God send thee care. I'm in a hare's likeness now, but I shall be in a woman's likeness even now." Reading Emma Wilby's The Visions of Isabel Gowdy was particularly illuminating to me, and this specific chant kept popping up in my head for a long time before I decided to bring it into Maleficium. The hare and the rabbit are my symbolic animals. I deeply identify with them. It all felt weirdly familiar to me. Into a Hare was the last track I recorded, and it's the strangest of the album. There's no music in the traditional sense, and the only real moment of vocal performance happens here, which was particularly intense, disorienting, and stressful for me. At one point, I ended up vomiting on myself, which I guess you can hear it if you look for it. Maleficium was an experience like no other, I guess. Track 3. My Mother, the Vampire. Imagine this. A covered wagon slowly making its way down a road, cutting through the open country. The sun is setting, and the crisp air of spring is turning cold. A young man gently steers the horses, and his sad-eyed wife cradles their crying baby near her breast. He is satisfied, but she never wanted to be a mother. During the time they live, however, she has no say in the matter. The little thing cries, and she tries her best to soothe and silence it. She remembers a song she heard her parents sing when she was small. As the words leave her mouth, she seals her fate, though still unknowingly. She will kill her child one day, as the resentment of her condition grows. Maleficium is, in many ways, a perversion of motherhood. I have nothing good to say about it now. I won't go into details, but my own experiences with motherhood are horrible. I often imagine a mother dying and coming back every night to her old house to torment and feast upon the life force of the daughter she hated so much. This image is vivid as light, pungent as blood, and loud as a banshee to me. And in this album is where I want to bring it forth, to expose it, to confront it, and hopefully to banish it forever. When I finished the musical part of this piece, I felt something was missing, and as I pondered about motherhood with all my filthy and disgraceful thoughts, I remember a few traditional songs I used to play with my hurdy-gurdy when I was a busking musician back in Brazil. Tua Naya Meiga is a traditional song from Galicia, and Una Madre Comió Asado, a traditional Sephardic song, though this one specifically might have come from or was popularized in Morocco. Here I have two meditations on motherhood, witchcraft, and cannibalism that I decided to bookend my composition with. It felt extremely appropriate. I used to play them. I hate my mother. They are of Spanish origins. I am in Spain. so much of my surroundings affected my composition without me realizing. It was one of those "I got it" moments I experienced as Maleficium came to be. And I cannot, for the life of me, shake myself out of visions of Francisco Goya's Saturn devouring his child when I think about this track. Also, I shared a house with a baby for a considerable while in Spain. His tormenting cries seeped into this. Oh, my hatred of all things maternal. Tua nai amiga. Your mother is a witch. I cried and cried on a Sunday afternoon. May Lorenzo come, may he tell the truth. May he tell the truth, but cautiously. Your mother is a witch. I'm afraid of her. I'm afraid of her, but she won't eat me. Your mother is a witch, your father an evil man. Y una madre comió asado, and a mother roasted and ate her child, the beloved one. Track 4, The Chewing Dead. This track is the heart and genesis of Maleficium. Everything was imagined, conjured, created, and brought in because of it. My endless struggle with being the daughter of my mother manifests constantly as visions of vampirism. I simply cannot think about revenants without making a connection with motherhood. So many aspects of it are vampiric to me. The fetus, a blood parasite, oftentimes unwanted, growing inside. The life force of the mother bleeding away to keep the newborn alive at all costs. The resentment that can arise between mother and daughter, forced together through the covenant and obligation of blood. Motherhood is a red stain in my mind. As I conceptualized this piece, I had 4 main points of inspiration. De Masticatione Mortuorum, or The Chewing Dead, a lecture given by Philip Raw in 1679. Vampires, Burial and Death, the book by Paul Barber. Alexei Tolstoy's short story The Family of the Vurdalak, and the 2023 movie adaptation Le Vurdalak by Adrian Bowe. I imagine my own mother dead, chewing her burial shroud beneath the earth, tormenting me until my only release would be my own suicide, which would turn me into a vampire as well. This is a delicate subject, one that makes me deeply uncomfortable. So there was no choice for me. The music needed to sound uncomfortable. That translated to a shocking, loud bang as the first sound you hear. A bell struck, a gate slamming shut, and the hit of a timpano. Dozens of corpses gnawing through their shrouds, which I recorded by ripping through a cotton dress and stuffing it into my mouth. A trio of hurdy-gurdies playing together, which sounds less harmonious than you might think, heralding the descent into the crypts where the vampires are bound to chew for the rest of their miserable, eternal unlives. This uncomfortableness reaches its climax as I weave into the narrative what can only be described as my first, only, and last attempt at a musical genre I had never worked with before, though I'm morbidly fascinated by it, much like a car crash you can't look away from. Black metal. Electric guitars are another uncomfortable thing to me, so this macabre celebration of my cringes goes on and on until the merciful choral at the end tries its best to offer some solace. I hate this track a lot and love it in equal measure. Track 5, Cobweb and spit. It is an old practice to treat wounds with spider silk, one that can be traced back all the way to ancient Greece. In rural Eastern Europe, you could have your scrape treated by a grandmother chewing on a ball of cobweb and applying this most quaint dressing into it. Isn't that just a marvelous image? Spiders are one of my favorite animals. Ever since I was a child, my obsession with them is strong. They were never scary to me. I think they are profoundly misunderstood. It is not the first time I speak about spiders in my music. In Burials, the song Miguel draws a parallel between the apprehension people have about spiders and trans people, which just now made me realize Maleficium is the first album I wrote that I don't talk about transness. Am I growing up? When I went into my little rabbit hole of the many wonderful uses of spider silk to heal, I knew I would have to bring this vision into this collection of songs, again to offer some comfort after the horrors of the preceding track, The Chewing Dead. As such, what would be the most delicious thing I could think of in terms of music to compare to silk? Why, 80s goth rock, of course. It is no surprise to anyone at this point that I love goth music, and while my dabbling with darkwave branches more into the folk side of it, some people like to use the term neofolk, which I think is both hilarious and stupid, as there's no such thing as new folk. I don't think I ever wrote a proper goth rock song before. Sure, Necrophila Americana from Necromadion is my love letter to the genre, but this time I wanted to use the repetitive, crappy, low-budget drum machine of the 80s, the electric guitar reverbed into oblivion, and the prominent bass line, all mixed with my hurdy-gurdy to still keep it coherent. The first half of the song might sound jarring in the middle of Maleficium, but that's exactly the point. The duality of cobweb and spit is presented as thus. The web, something made from an external source, is portrayed through the use of a specific musical genre. And the spit, which is my own, is almost like a Raine Holtz cover of the first half. Cinematic, orchestral, folk, and dramatic. There's no real cure for the horrors of Maleficium, but at least the bleeding can be stopped for a short while. As long as there are spiders in the world, I am safe, and love exists. Track 6, Suicide by Proxy. Suicide. I feel like lately we avoid this word in the most stupid, childish, and annoying way possible. I feel suicidal every time I hear a person say "unalive" to avoid censorship on the internet. I won't ever shy away from it. Suicide. 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 Sweet suicide. Suicide is a sacred human right, and I'll die on this hill. Probably by my own hand. I survived 4 major suicide attempts in my life, and I live with the shadow of self-destruction every day. Suicide ideation is something that is part of who I am at this point. My therapist tells me to be mindful of determinism, but there's one thing I know for sure. Once you try to kill yourself, because killing yourself simply makes sense, the possibility of it never truly goes away. When I watched the 2024 movie The Devil's Bath by Veronica Franz and Severin Fiala, I felt a familiarity with the subject portrayed. The movie is itself heavily based on Kathy Stewart's book Suicide by Proxy in Early Modern Germany, Crime, Sin and Salvation. which talks about a very ingenious loophole depressed people found in the 1600s to ensure their deaths, what is now called suicide by proxy. As suicide was, and still is, a mortal sin according to Christianity, these people would commit capital crimes, immediately confess to them, and make use of final absolution rites to go to heaven after their executions. Most of them would kill children, because by the logic of their religion, children are sinless and would go straight to heaven upon death. Therefore, governments had a real problem in their hands. They eventually stopped executing people for these specific crimes and turned to humiliating and debasing forms of punishment to turn perpetrators into examples. With these images in my mind, and still thinking about motherhood, my thoughts turned elsewhere. What makes a child so sacred and important? Reading When Children Became People, The Birth of Childhood in Early Christianity by Odd Magnet Bake offered me an insight. I'm still not very convinced, but thinking about the children murdered by those who simply wanted to end their own lives brings me no joy. I insist, if people stop demonizing suicide, and if the grip of religion would lessen, this absurd phenomenon might have never existed. I try to convey these themes as sweetly as possible with the music of this track, but there's little sweetness to be found in it, I suppose. By the end of it, a slit throat and a lifeless body thrown into water, as well as a final sigh of acceptance, are the only things we are left with. Track 7, Threnody. There's only one way out of Maleficium: death. Here I am, shovel in hand, opening a grave on a rainy morning. Can you hear me crying in the background? It's different from burials, though ultimately the end result of everything is only death, death, and death. In burials, I was burying something I deeply loved. In Maleficium, I'm clawing desperately at damp earth, hoping the hole is big enough to stuff these horrors in and praying they will stay there. My pipe dream as I created this track was, if I die tomorrow, let this piece be my most glorious effort. I think I failed at that, but it still sounds beautiful to me. Threnody was recorded before most of the other tracks, and it set the tone of the album. I was afraid Maleficium would only be a collection of sounds, ASMR from the grave, indigestible, unlistenable and dronish. But this piece brought me back to a place where I realized I could still say a lot in less obvious ways, while still maintaining the original idea of a spacious, atmospheric landscape to tell the story. I decided to keep this album long in length, but short in number of tracks. If you break them down into their specific sections, you would find around 19 different motifs, but the idea of using one slot to explore numerous visions felt extremely important and needed here. 7 is a very relevant number in a lot of cultures, for reasons that, to be honest, I really don't know much about, nor care. But it's appropriate, which I guess is the idea of 7 anyway. There are a lot of beautiful ways to tell a tragedy. Art is mostly about that at the end of the day. A threnody is a lament for the dead. What else can I say? Maleficium ends in a lamentation. I don't know what comes after something like this. Perhaps now is time to go into a long rest once again. 2 years of my life these experiences cost me. The creation of art is the only thing I have to try and understand them. My hope remains the same, the only reason that makes me share my music in the first place. That this meditation helps people in similar struggles. No experience is individual, I'm beginning to learn. Maybe seeing others is seeing yourself as part of a whole. And maybe pain can be made lesser, if only for a fleeting moment, if we hear each other. Thank you for listening to me. What a night. What a night. I trust you're still in one piece. Here at last, by the entrance of the crypt, is our journey ended. Thank you for coming with me. Exploring these abominations is less daunting when I have your company. You are a true friend. It is easy, almost natural, to ignore independent art, simply because nowadays it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. So, the fact that you found your way to me and Maleficium means more than I could ever possibly convey with words. Nonetheless, I hope you feel my gratitude and know that Maleficium is always here for you whenever you need to take a walk on the dark side. This was the Maleficium Familiar Companion, a radio transmission by Raine Holtz, live from the Necromedion.